When you think about the history of Native Americans, your mind probably goes straight to what we've all seen in movies or history books: beautiful feathered headdresses, intricate woven blankets, and bold, striking war paint. We are taught to look at these incredible traditions as temporary, things worn for a specific ceremony or a single battle and then washed away. But there is a completely permanent, deeply personal history that standard history books almost always leave out. It's a history that wasn't recorded on paper or carved into stone, but was written directly into the living skin of the people who called this continent home for thousands of years. For a long time, early European settlers and outside historians completely misunderstood these markings. They would look at an indigenous person covered in beautiful permanent designs and dismiss it all as just war paint. By using that lazy, catch-all phrase, they managed to ignore a sacred, highly sophisticated system of tattooing that varied beautifully from tribe to tribe across hundreds of independent nations. The truth is, traditional North American tattooing was an incredible art form filled with deep human emotion, pride, and spiritual connection. It wasn't about looking tough or decorating the body for the sake of vanity. It was about honoring who you were, where you came from, and the community that supported you. Let's do a real, heartfelt deep dive into the history of Native American tattooing. We are going to step past the old Hollywood stereotypes and look at the real human stories behind these marks. From the spiritual patterns of the ancient mound builders to the earned honors of the woodland warriors, the deeply moving tradition of women's chin tattoos, and the beautiful way young people are reclaiming this art form today to heal from the past. To really understand where this deep connection to ink comes from, we have to travel back over 1,000 years ago, long before European ships ever arrived on these shores. Across the American Midwest and Southeast, ancient Mississippian civilizations built massive, beautiful earthwork mounds. They left behind incredible carved shells, clay pottery, and stone statues that show human faces covered in elegant, sweeping patterns around the eyes, mouths, and arms. For a long time, archaeologists thought these patterns were just face paint or clothing, but modern research has shown us that these were literal, permanent records of ancient tattoos. For these ancient communities, getting a tattoo was a way to align your soul with the natural and spiritual world around you. They didn't see themselves as separate from nature. They saw themselves as a small, interconnected part of a massive living universe. One of the most profound designs from this era was the weeping eye or forked eye pattern, which was tattooed directly around a person's eye sockets to mimic the facial markings of the peregrine falcon. The falcon wasn't just admired because it was an apex predator. It was respected for its incredible speed, its sharp focus, and its absolute clarity of vision. To wear those falcon lines around your own eyes was a deeply spiritual experience. It was believed to grant you a deeper kind of sight, the ability to see through lies, to track your way through the darkest forests, and to navigate the emotional and spiritual dangers of life with clarity and wisdom. It was a permanent reminder to look at the world with focus, honor, and truth. As the centuries passed and communities grew into the great nations we know today, like the Mohawk, the Iroquois, the Osage, and the Cherokee, tattoos became a living, breathing diary of a person's life achievements and family roots. In these societies, you couldn't just walk into a space, look at a wall of designs, and pick something out because it looked cool. Every single mark on your skin had to be earned, and wearing a symbol you hadn't rightfully achieved was seen as a deep disrespect to the community and the spiritual laws of nature. Think of it as a beautiful visual ledger of a person's character. For a warrior, every line pulled into the skin was a badge of honor, a milestone of protection. If a man successfully defended his village from danger, or brought home resources to help his people survive a brutal winter, the community elders would grant him the right to receive specific parallel lines on his arms or chest. If you walked into a village and met a warrior with thick horizontal bands running down his forearms, you didn't see a random design. You saw a history book. Those lines told you exactly how many times he had put his life on the line to keep his family safe. Because different tribes across the continent spoke completely different languages, these tattoos also acted as a universal, non-verbal passport. A traveler from one nation could walk into the territory of a completely different tribe in the deep woods, and without speaking a single syllable, the people there could read his chest and wrists like an open book. The marks instantly declared his name, his clan, his achievements, and whether he came in peace as a traitor or as a seasoned protector. It was a system built on absolute honesty, mutual respect, and shared identity. One of the biggest misconceptions left behind by old history books is the idea that tattooing was an exclusively male tradition meant only for warriors. The beautiful reality is that in many of the most powerful agricultural and hunting societies, women were the primary keepers, practitioners, and recipients of the sacred ink. For nations like the Cree, the Inuit, and various Plains tribes, a woman's tattoo history was the ultimate symbol of life, love, and the survival of her people. Let's look at one of the most moving traditions: the vertical lines tattooed onto a woman's chin, known as the Yidįįłtoo among northern Athabascan nations. When a young girl reached adulthood, she wasn't just left to navigate that transition alone. She was brought before the elder women of her village in a beautiful ceremony to receive her first permanent chin lines. These markings were deep physical prayers for her health, her fertility, and her emotional strength. The lines were placed on her jaw to give her the vitality to carry the next generation and the resilience to raise her family through the hardest times. A woman's hands and forearms would also be covered in delicate geometric networks that celebrated her incredible skills, her deep knowledge of medicinal plants, her artistry in weaving, or her ability to preserve food to keep the village alive. When an elder woman passed away and her soul traveled to the next world, these tattoos served one final, beautiful purpose. According to the spiritual beliefs of many tribes, a wise ancestor guards the path to the afterlife. When a soul approaches, this guardian looks closely at the person's skin. If she sees the sacred earned markings on the woman's jaw and hands, she instantly recognizes her as a true daughter of the nation and welcomes her home. The tattoo was your permanent connection to your roots, stretching across life, death, and eternity. To fully appreciate the beauty of these markings, we have to look at the incredible care, patience, and human touch required to create them. Indigenous practitioners engineered two completely unique natural methods: puncture tattooing and skin stitching. For the puncture method, artists would gather the long, razor-sharp thorns of the hawthorn tree, or carefully shape the tiny, delicate bones of wild birds and fish into fine needles. They would lash these natural tools to a wooden handle, dip them into a rich, dark ink made from pure charcoal soot collected from burned hardwoods, and gently tap the design into the skin using a small wooden mallet. The second method, skin stitching, is one of the most unique and intimate art forms ever created. Practiced widely across the Arctic and eastern woodlands, the practitioner would take a fine bone needle and thread it with a strand of animal sinew or plant fiber that had been thoroughly soaked in thick, dark charcoal paste. Instead of tapping the skin, the artist would literally sew the design directly through the upper layers of the flesh. They would pass the needle just beneath the surface for a few millimeters and pull it back out, dragging the ink-soaked thread along with it. As the thread passed through, it left behind a permanent trail of pure carbon trapped safely inside the skin. It required an incredibly gentle master touch. If they went too deep, it would hurt the client. If they went too shallow, the design would fade away. The heartbreak of this history is that during the late 19th and 20th centuries, the United States and Canadian governments tried to wipe this entire culture off the map. Through forced assimilation, the banning of sacred ceremonies, and sending children away to boarding schools, traditional tattooing was systematically forbidden. For nearly 3 generations, the needles went completely silent, and the skin of these great nations was forced to become blank. But a connection that runs this deep can never be truly broken. Today, we are witnessing one of the most beautiful, emotional cultural revivals in human history. All across North America, young Indigenous artists and everyday people are reclaiming the bone needle and the skin-stitch thread. They are talking to elders, researching old museum archives, and proudly bringing the ink back to their skin. When you see a modern Indigenous person walking through a city today, carrying traditional chin lines or falcon patterns on their face, you are not looking at a temporary fashion trend or a rebellious statement. You are looking at a profound moment of healing. You are looking at a living, breathing celebration of survival. By putting the ink back into their skin, they are actively reaching across generations, grabbing the hands of their ancestors and saying, "We are still here." They are proving that despite centuries of hardship, their pride, their history, and their spirit are completely unerasable. The ink has returned, the stories are being told out loud, and the connection is finally unbroken. We built this channel to step past the superficial pop culture trends and look at the real, raw heart, history, and cultural truths of global human marking. We want to honor the ancient traditions and help the next generation of collectors respect the incredible history of the skin they walk in. If this deeply human look into the history, meaning, and revival of Indigenous North American tattooing resonated with you today, hit that subscribe button to join our community. We drop raw, unfiltered, story-driven technical case studies every single week. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Seeing how deeply connected these tattoos were to a person's life story, family, and community, how does this change the way you look at the tattoos we wear today? Let's open up a real, respectful conversation in the comments section below. Subscribe if you want to know how the game actually works. Peace. Respect the journey, respect the history, respect the craft. I'll see you on the next deep dive.